Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. Come along with me today as we talk about two concepts that can really help when you're feeling overwhelmed, feeling like a lack of motivation, starting to think that you're lazy, that you're not good enough. A lot of times I told myself that, even though deep down, I was feeling exhausted and burnout for a reason. I was like running on empty just all day, doing my best. But there are two really revolutionary things that I came across, and it has just had such an impact in my life. And I know that it can help other moms or really anyone in just feeling energized, motivated, fulfilled. And these two concepts are knowing about your talents and your temperament. And probably about a year ago, I had made a video about my favorite Catholic resources on the 4 temperaments. And so for those of you that are not familiar, the temperaments have been around. It's not like a new concept. This is something that's been around for hundreds of years. St. Thomas Aquinas talked about it. So I feel like, that is a reliable and trusted source. And he talks about that we have this physical predisposition to react in a certain way. So, for example, you might notice that some people are more quick to anger, or they're more quick to take charge. Others, are very pensive and like to think about something very thoroughly. Or someone's more laid back and just takes things in stride. Someone is just way more social, high energy, is really good at motivating others. And so this ties into the temperament, that physical predisposition. And so, for example, let me first tell you what are those 4 temperaments. There's choleric, there's sanguine, there's melancholic, and phlegmatic. So, for example, a choleric, their virtues, they just have a tendency towards certain virtues, but also certain vices. So those virtues are being a natural born leader, good at making decisions and initiating projects. Those are the virtues and strengths, and there's plenty more for cholerics. But then the vices that they can fall into, anytime we have an excess of a virtue, it can turn into a vice. So then anger and pride. And so each of the 4 temperaments have this kind of like, the virtues and strengths versus the weaknesses. And so knowing this about yourself and recognizing what temperament you fall into, and sometimes we can have a mix, but it's just so helpful to know this. And there are free quizzes and assessments online, and I can link that down below. But I highly recommend knowing your temperament, knowing the temperament of your spouse, and it's actually pretty easy sometimes to figure it out for your kids too. If you have like a very strong-willed child, that's probably a choleric. Sanguine would be like super social, high energy. They can never stay upset or mad for too long. That would be a sanguine. Melancholic's like the more pensive child. Really enjoy their time doing puzzles and reading books. Phlegmatic, like a very easygoing child. Maybe sometimes they need that little extra push to do their homework or a task. These are just like examples that are coming right off the top of my mind, but there's a set of books actually, The Temperament God Gave You, The Temperament God Gave Your Spouse, and The Temperament God Gave Your Kids. And this concept is also really helpful if you're starting your rule of life, and just being aware of your temperament is helpful because, some people just function really well on a very strict, regimented schedule. 9 o'clock, I'm going to do this. 9:30, we're going to do this. Whereas others definitely need more flexibility And even if maybe by yourself you prefer a very strict schedule, block scheduling might be a better fit as a mother, just because there's so many interruptions and things that happen unexpectedly. And then it can be really frustrating if, 9:30 we were supposed to do this, but something unavoidable happened. A big spill in the kitchen, or a child needs you, or someone's sick. So what I like about block scheduling is it leaves that room for flexibility, and things get done during that certain time range. So 9 to 12, we're going to have our breakfast. We already said our morning prayers. We're going to get dressed. You just have your list of tasks that you're going to do, and then you have all that time to get it done. So definitely also it's helpful for a rule of life, knowing your temperament. And like I said, I will link down below the resources that I know of that are really helpful, and to take that free assessment. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is knowing your talents. And this is something that I actually just found out about a few months ago, and it has just had such an impact. Like I talked about in my previous video about our priorities and how they can be inverted, and we feel drained. We start thinking, believing these lies of the enemy, that we're lazy, that we're not good enough, even, that we're failing. I know because I've had all those negative thoughts in the past. And what is just really helpful for combating this is knowing your strengths or your talents. Okay, and how do we do that? So there's this quiz or assessment. It's called the Clifton Strengths test. And so there's basically 34 strengths that they've identified. And they were doing research, I think, for about 50 years to really hone in on this. And I found it to be very accurate. So there's these 34 strengths, and then they'll rank them. The top 5 to 10 are the ones that you're strongest in and that energize you, that motivate you. And your bottom 5 are, they don't call them weaknesses, rather that they're your bottom strengths that you could even potentially have become good at these things, but they're draining you. So you want to leverage what are your strengths that just come naturally to you and actually like motivate you and you feel energized, rather than wasting energy on those bottom 5 that they just really suck out that energy, that effort. And instead, maybe you can find someone to help you do certain things that are just taking that energy. And I'll try to think of some examples, but let me get back to the strengths. So those top 5 or those top 10 strengths, you just feel motivated when you're using them. They just come naturally to you. And so I want to give you an example. So they'll kind of sum up each strength with just a single word, but you really have to unpack it to understand it more. And so, for example, my number 1 came out as futuristic. Okay, when you think of, just futuristic, what does that mean? Well, what it comes down to is, that it really energizes me and motivates me to think about the future, making plans. So it kind of identifying that and a few others that came up in my top 5, they're all very much about me having time to think and to write down my ideas and my plans. And that was something that I was never doing anymore as a mom. As a college student alone, I had plenty of time to think about my goals, write them down. But as a mom, it's like go, 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 and you really don't have a moment to just kind of think about things. And so if you're like me and that's your temperament, I'm a melancholic. The other ones I had in my top 5 are like ideation. It's like someone that loves thinking about ideas and talking about those. And strategic, so planning, all these things. I had no idea that these were even strengths or talents. And as I've kind of put them into practice, I do see that not everyone has these strengths. It doesn't come easy to everyone else. And so that's kind of the beauty of knowing about the Clifton Strengths, that it identifies things that, since they come naturally to us, they don't even feel like necessarily they would be considered a talent, but they truly are, because they're things that make us unique and set us apart. And when we feel motivated and, we're using our strengths, then they can really help us to compensate for those bottom 5 strengths, that really just drain us more quickly. So for example, one of my bottom 5 was consistency. And I've always known that like I don't like a strict schedule or routine. Like I like flexibility and go with the flow. But as a mom, routines are important. So it really for a long time felt like, oh, I'm just not doing a good job and feeling bad about myself. But recognizing these strengths, these other ones that I have, using ideas and planning for the future, I just found that taking that extra time to leverage that and setting specific time aside, for example, those strengths that I have, most of them all have to do with that I have some set time alone to think about things. And one of my other top 5 was relator. And that's like that I really like to team up with someone and feel like a team, and that we're doing this together. And so I have older children now. So I started kind of like, asking them, okay, let's work on this together. And what a difference it has made. So it's like really simple things that I've tweaked, and it has just made such a difference in my life. And this is all thanks to my good friend who is a coach in these Clifton Strengths. She's the one that introduced me to this concept. And so she did these 3 coaching sessions where we just delve deeper into these strengths and kind of like what are, they call them like intrinsic needs. And so that just was such an impactful thing. And if you're interested in that, there is this book called Strengths-Based Parenting. And I like that one because that one comes with 2 free assessments for your top 5 strengths, not only for you, but for a child too. So I had my 14-year-old and my 13-year-old take this, and that was so helpful. And because we were actually just a few months ago making a huge decision of switching homeschool curriculums for my oldest daughter who is starting high school. And so being our oldest, we had never, had to make that decision of what are we going to do for high school. So it was a scary decision because we have used the Seton curriculum all along, like for our whole homeschool journey, except for the ones I mentioned, like for kindergarten and learning to read. Aside from that, we have always used Seton. Now we found this high school curriculum that is online with live classes and other students, and it's still Catholic, but it has ended up being such a good fit. And just knowing her strengths, it just like really confirmed. And now in hindsight, especially now that she's been doing it for a few months and I'm just seeing her like so happy and thriving, I'm just so happy with our decision. And I see how helpful knowing those strengths were for her. Like she just seems super happy and motivated, and it can be the same for us as mothers, and knowing where we thrive and what are important things that we need to make sure to set time aside for. And so that kind of wraps it up. I do plan to interview my friend who is a coach in these Clifton Strengths, so you can just hear more about it. And like I said, it has benefited me so much. Just a few simple changes, and I feel like I'm way more productive and getting more things done, and just feeling more happy and energized. And it's interesting because I have been interested in, psychology and productivity, those kind of topics for a long time, and I never had heard about this before. And so to wrap it up, just knowing your temperament and your strengths, your talents that God gave you, that can really help to turn things around, especially when we're filling our mind with thoughts like, oh, you're lazy, you're failing. These are just terrible things that we tell ourselves, And instead, we should focus on, we pray to God for the graces that we need, and we're doing our best. And I like that prayer. Jesus, I surrender myself to you. You take care of everything. And then he just guides us and points us in the right direction. And with his help, with his grace, and just recognizing, how he made us and using our talents to the best of our abilities, this is just going to make a huge impact. Well, thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel, and push that notification bell so you can get notified as soon as a new video is out. Thank you, and God bless you.